When I'm not reeling from the unexpected vitriol I got from the flannel community after saying that I don't really like flannel the other day, I like to answer questions and comments I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. I've been willing to accept a lot about Sean, but this no flannel thing might be a bit too far. Alright, we're gonna get to the arpeggios in a second, but I do just want to clarify my thoughts on flannel. It's not that I dislike flannel. I personally don't wear it. I mean, I live in Florida, it's always 100 degrees, so I'm not really generally gonna wear flannel. I think it's the issue that people use the term interchangeably as both a pattern and a fabric. And I know that yes, it is a fabric, and plaid is the pattern. It's becoming used interchangeably, and it's starting to get a little confusing, and that's all I'm going to say on the matter. But I just want to use this channel as a place to really talk about hard-hitting subjects like this, and bring it to the forefront. And let me be your punching bag if it just kind of eases some of the political dividedness in the current climate of our world. That G arpeggio isn't really an arpeggio. As well as G, B, and D, you put an A in there. Alright, so we're going to talk about this once and for all. The go-to arpeggio I always play, which I think this is like the most important thing that you can actually learn to maybe branch off from like beginner into intermediate stuff, is playing a G major chord as an arpeggio. An arpeggio is when you play the notes of a chord one note at a time. So if this is a G chord, I can make an arpeggio just by going up and down and like... Okay, so that's like a G arpeggio. Everybody's heard that before, but I think the real value and utility in arpeggios are neck spanning things that you can kind of just do all over the place, right? So the go-to one that I always play starts on the G, on the 3rd fret, on the low E string, and then we're gonna grab ring finger, 5th fret, slide that to the 7th fret. So yes, the notes are G, A, B, then that lines your pointer finger up with the D on the A string, 5th fret, and then you can kind of do that same pattern again. So 3, 5, 7, 5A, down a string, gives you the octave of where you started, and then you do the same thing again, and then if you want to keep going, you just go diagonal, there's your next G, and then again, it's just this one pattern, and then it takes you all the way. Use all the frets, use the whole neck, use everything. It's great, right? It's the perfect major arpeggio. But here's the thing, I always get salty music theory people out there that are like, oh, well, you're playing that second in there in the major scale, right? It's like, yeah, okay, I'm really just hitting it on the way to the 3rd, right? These being the first 3 notes in the major scale. I do think that playing it in, if we were to play the actual scale, the G major scale like this would be a 3 notes per string type way to do it instead of the tried and true way like this. But I do think that like getting your hand and playing arpeggios this way is not as valuable and fluid as maybe going through like this, because it feels more like a solo when you're kind of traveling instead of maybe some people lead with their, middle finger. I used to be me, you know what I mean? So yes, technically an A note is not in a G major arpeggio. But then people are like, well, what do you call this? Would you call it, you can't call it a G2, you could call it a G add 9, but it's like, in the spirit of an add 9, yes, the 2 and the 9 are the same note, adding an A. I could play a G major add 9 arpeggio, that would, anybody on earth would do this. 1, 3, 5, 9. Okay, so guess what? We're just gonna call it that. It's like, you can call it whatever you want. You could say that your plaid thin cotton shirt is your flannel, okay? You can say it. I'm probably gonna like bang on you and dunk on you on YouTube, but like, yeah, just like I get dunked on in the comments all the time. This is a G major arpeggio, right? And it's the best thing to do it because I just remember like, I would always be like, all right, I'm gonna play chords. And then, I practiced that forever, and I got, okay at chords. And then it's like, all right, well, maybe I want to play lead. It's like, all right, lead, minor pentatonic. And it's like, you're by yourself playing your acoustic guitar. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. But then, all right, cool, a chord coming from an arpeggio. It's like, that's something you can kind of like do in between, right? You're playing the chord, maybe you just have like a 2 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And and then you jump into that arpeggio before you get to the next chord, right? And then you do the same thing. And it's like, all right, yeah, what is that? I just did the same thing on a C. Start on the C on the A string. Again, it's something that you can always do that's always going to sound good. It always works. Every major chord, whether it's in the root of the key, like in the key of G, we'd have G major, C major, and D major. They all have that second note in there. So you could play a G, C, D, G. Right? So, yeah, it's the most important tool that you can use as far as maybe connecting from open chords into doing something a little bit more. And guess what? It sounds like an arpeggio, okay? Like, looks like an arpeggio, sounds like an arpeggio. It is an arpeggio. The thing about why that's so important too, getting that 2 in there, is because it makes it easier on your hand, especially when you're coming from the open chord position chords. Because, like, yeah, you could do a 3, 7, 5 like that, or even, with your middle finger, but like, that is such a, look at that reach. Oh my gosh, I hate it, especially on acoustic guitar, right? It's a little bit easier on electric and stuff, but it's amazing. Speaking of acoustic guitar, this video is sponsored by Elixir Strings, which is why these strings sound so good, and even this reach of mine is getting the job done, right? Because Elixirs are just the best strings in the game. These are the phosphor bronze ones. I put 12s on almost all my acoustics, and they just last forever. Best strings on earth. Shout out to Elixir. Thank you for sponsoring this video. They sponsored all the shorts that I did last month. If you've ever seen any of those, just talking about different chords and stuff like that. So yeah, get yourself some Elixir strings, play your arpeggios, throw the 2 in there, throw it in with pride. Be like, I'm playing a G major arpeggio. I don't care how many A's there are in it. In my C major arpeggios, I like my C major arpeggios with a D in there. I like my D major arpeggios with an E in there, right? Don't let people on the internet tell you that you can't play a major arpeggio and add a 2 or add a 9 without telling anybody. Because like I said, it breaks up that stretch so you can kind of slide into it. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, along with one of the worst attempts at a joke I've ever heard. So this is on a YouTube short where I brought light on another very spicy topic. How in the new Batman movie, they just steal the theme from the Darth Vader theme, right? The Imperial March. And I tell you what, there's a lot of salty blues comments out there. Just go after Batman, and you'll hear the saltiest comments on earth. So don't mess with the Batman crowd. And the Salty Blues comment of the week is actually a Salty Batman comment of the week. So, I feel like I can handle the blues guitarists, but I don't know if I want to open that can of worms and expose myself to the Batman crowd. Well, duh, bro. Everything sounds better with Elixir strings. Plus, when you have too many guitars like I do, they don't rust up from sitting. I've been using them for over a decade now, and anytime I don't use them, I only leave the other strings on long enough to put Elixirs on them. I usually am not a brand snob, but they have earned the praise I give them. Yeah, same. So, again, I'm sponsored, but Elixir is like the best brand to be sponsored by for me because that is like the sneaky thing that I haven't really talked about. I remember before I lived in Florida, I would go visit my mom here, and she had like a really like cheap acoustic guitar, and I would put strings on there, and then I would leave for a year and come back next Christmas, and those strings would just be rusted from like the Florida salt because she like lived close to the Gulf, right? And then I put Elixirs on there, and I would come back the next year, and they would be in tune and not rusted or anything and feel great. And that was when I was like, I'm just never not gonna play Elixirs, right? Because again, I too have a lot of guitars all over the place, so putting Elixirs on them really kind of just keeps them right and tight for years. So I'm not going to tell you to not change your guitar strings, less than every few years, but if you are in a position where you're not going to change your guitar strings for years, Elixirs are like they're the only option, not only the best option. So yeah, again, I know it's sponsored, whatever, but it's my favorite string company in the world. So if you haven't tried them, definitely I'll have an affiliate link in the description. Check them out. The days and days I spent spinning those Ryders albums. Good times. Awesome show too, man. You killed it. Thank you so much. So this is on the video I posted a few days ago about my solo show in Ireland, which was like the ceremonious farewell show to the Emeryld Ryders. And now we're on to the solo stuff. So I'll link the Ryders stuff in the description too if you guys haven't heard it, because I think it really turned out cool. But I'm excited to get on to the next chapter. So I think actually later this week I'll probably post a video because I've just been working on new music. So if you guys have any questions about the recording or mixing process specifically, let me know. Because I've said that before, and it's like, yeah, I'd like to know about it. Well, are there specific things that you would like to know? Because I think it's easier to address questions more specifically than like, oh, everything about like recording or mixing. So I'm kind of doing that, spending a lot of time on it. So I might as well answer some questions while I'm at it, so let me know. Alright, for listening homework, I'm going to throw you to my favorite band of all time, Radiohead, Moonshaped Pool. I was listening to the album again, which I hadn't listened to this album for a long time, but I listened to it again over the weekend. And it's like, man, this is such a great album. Really does not get its due as far as like being in just like the iconic discography. So this is a track called Deck's Dark off of Moonshaped Pool. Great song, great vibe, amazing. Check it out. And then if you have any questions or comments, hit me in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. Actually, not Twitter. Twitter's a hellscape now, so forget about Twitter. But anything else, let me know. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.